Okay, so this week we're going to be talking about something pretty awesome, and that's the working holiday visa scheme in New Zealand, or this gap year idea in New Zealand. So if you don't know what a working holiday is, it's a visa that allows people between 18 to 30 or 35 years old for selected countries, and we'll talk about that soon, to come to New Zealand and be able to work and travel in the country. So it's a temporary work visa that allows you to come and travel in New Zealand. You still have to have holiday as your main purpose of traveling to New Zealand. It's really not a path to immigration or any of those kind of things. It's just to come, take a gap year, gather life experiences. Also, if you're younger, being able to afford an extended trip to New Zealand. So we thought that during this episode, it would be a good idea to go over everything you need to know about traveling in New Zealand on a working holiday visa. So that's what we're going to be recapping today for you, just going through everything in broad stroke and pointing you in the right direction if you do need some more information. Strong hit, if you need some more information, there is a link right on the top of the description of this video that will send you to a complete guide which will have all the info you ever need for that. Alright, so while you guys are coming up with questions, we're going to get started with a quick series of tips.
Yeah, so we're going to get started with 8 requirements that you need to meet in order to get a working holiday visa for New Zealand, because unfortunately it isn't open to absolutely everybody. There are a few requirements that you do need to meet. So Robin will start us off.
Alright, so first up, in order to get a working holiday visa in New Zealand, you need to have a passport from one of the 45 different countries which are allowed to come to New Zealand on a working holiday visa. At time of recording, we have 45 countries, but this can change, so make sure to check on the New Zealand immigration website to see if your country is eligible for it. But right now, the countries that are eligible for working holiday visa are Argentina, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Chile, China, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Hong Kong, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Korea, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Malta, Mexico, Netherlands, Norway, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Singapore, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, United Kingdom, USA, Uruguay, and Vietnam.
Wow, impressive list. Okay, so the next requirement is your age. So you need to be between 18 to 35 years old. So for most working holiday visas, it really depends on which country and what the conditions are for your country that you're of your nationality. But for most countries, you have to be between 18 to 30 years old. And then for a select few countries, that is extended up to 35 years old. And those extended up to that 35 years old includes Argentina, Canada, Chile, Czech, Finland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Uruguay.
Alright, so another condition that you need to meet when coming to New Zealand is that you need to still come in New Zealand primarily for a holiday. So again, as I mentioned early on in this episode, the working holiday visa is not intended to be a path to immigration into New Zealand, although some people have used it, in doing so. But the most people should be coming in New Zealand on the gap year with just the purpose of wanting to explore New Zealand and just not having enough funds to be able to fund an extended trip in New Zealand and just work along the way. With that in mind, you have to remember that the type of jobs that you're going to be getting usually are seasonal jobs. There will be the fruit picking or the farming type of jobs.
Okay, next requirement is you gotta have money. So you need to have a minimum of about 4,200 New Zealand dollars, and that is in order to support yourself. And also you need to either have an onward travel ticket or funds to purchase one. So go ahead, Robin. Sorry, I thought you were about to...
No worries. All right, so the next couple of requirements are pretty short. So you need to meet some basic health and character requirements, which will be assessed through a questionnaire during the application of your visa.
Sorry, what was that?
You also are not able to bring a child into New Zealand. That's the next one on the list. Along with your working holiday visa, you're more than welcome to bring a child in New Zealand if you're just traveling as a tourist, but not on a working holiday visa. You also need to have medical and travel insurance. That's a requirement for most of the working holiday visa, and we cover all of that in a separate video as well as on the website. So just make sure to check that out because there's a lot to this. And the last requirement, something that trips a lot of people, especially post-COVID, is that you cannot have been approved for a working holiday prior to your new application. So if you have applied and have been, not being able to take your working holiday or these kind of things, it's just too late and you can only apply once. So only apply when you're sure you can take your holiday. So while you guys keep going with some great questions, both of those questions were really good, Anthony and Fabio. We're going to go over when it is best to apply for a working holiday visa. So a lot of the working holiday visa have quotas, as we just mentioned with Laura. So one of the great things to do is to apply right when the quota opens, right? We just had an example right here with Fabio saying there's only 100 places every year for people from Austria, right? And so for that reason, the quotas get filled up really quickly. It's more of a first in, first served basis, not like who deserves it the most or anything. So you've got to apply really, really quickly. So in order to know when your quota opening dates are opening, there is a page on the Immigration New Zealand website, which is linked in the article in the description of this video. And then once you apply for your visa, it doesn't mean you have to fly to New Zealand as soon as possible. So there is a bit of a misconception right here, which I thought it'd be nice to clear up a little bit. So when you apply for your working holiday visa, let's say you apply for a 12-month working holiday visa, you get your application granted. At that point, you have 12 months to enter New Zealand. And then from the date you enter New Zealand, you have 12 months to experience New Zealand, to work and travel in the country. So applying for your working holiday visa can be done up to 11 months and 28 days before flying to New Zealand. So you don't have to just try to apply as soon as possible and then getting. It's a question that we get super often. So again, just to recap, let's say you apply for a 12-month working holiday visa. Once you get your visa approved, you've got 12 months to enter the country. Within those 12 months, at any point, you're going to enter the country. When you enter the country, right here, you have another 12 months to experience New Zealand. All right, so it's just something that we get a lot of questions about, so we thought we'd take extra time to clear up. What is Musti having to say?
Musti says, do you feel it is worth getting a 23-month visa for the UK and pay for the medical examination, or just get the 12-month and extend if that's possible? That is possible, but even if you extend, you have to pay for a medical examination in New Zealand. So you still have to go through that process.
So it would be easier to do the 23 months straight away.
Yeah, I mean, if you definitely know if you want to do the 23 months, it is probably a simpler process just to get that all done at the same time. However, because in New Zealand, if you are based in somewhere like Auckland, they're very used to doing the medical examinations specifically for immigration in New Zealand. It does turn out to be a little bit cheaper to get your medical examination in New Zealand. So if you're unsure whether you want to spend the 23 months, if you're like, okay, I'll just do the 12 months, see if I want to extend it, then it's still a pretty effortless process to go through once you are in New Zealand. But again, it's easier to do it if you are in one of those larger cities as well, so you can get your medical examination specifically for what you need for immigration.
Yeah, so and so that's the and we'll talk about the application really soon, but for the countries which are able to get a 23-month, then they need to do a medical check and something a bit more extensive. This does not apply to most other countries. So just putting it out there in case you're watching and you're not from the UK, it's okay. Or from Canada, which can do it as well, I think. Okay, so let's talk about applying for the working holiday visa now. Okay, so in order to apply for the working holiday visa in New Zealand, it is relatively easy. You just need to have a computer, an internet connection, Visa or MasterCard. It doesn't even have to be yours. It can be the one from your parents. It's absolutely fine. You need to have your passport. You need to have another piece of ID. If you are applying for 23 months, you need that medical and X-ray certificate for you, Musti. And obviously, you need to register on the Immigration New Zealand website. So that's kind of like what's going to happen. Now, when you have done all that and you register on the Immigration New Zealand website, then at that point you can apply for your working holiday visa. We have a complete walkthrough with screenshot for you on the website on NZ Pocket Guide. Again, there is a link in the description of this video. But in short, the application is going to take you about 45 minutes from at least what we have experienced ourselves. And it's split in 4 different categories. First up, you have to put all your personal information, all your details, you know, name, identifications, blah, 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 a lot of things. And note that some information like your occupation are actually optional, so you don't have to fill in all the blanks if you don't want to. Then you have to talk a little bit about your health. You obviously have to be in good health when coming to New Zealand on a working holiday visa. And so by answering those questions, it will determine, basically the system will tell you if there is some extra information you need to submit or not. Then there is a bit of tick boxes about your character, asking you if you plan on terrorizing people and things like that. You need to check yes or no on each of those boxes. And then there is some information that you need to give about your working holiday experience. So you planned working holiday visa, when you're thinking you're going to come to New Zealand, how long you think you're going to be staying, and all these kind of things. And remember that those are kind of what you're planning on doing. It doesn't have to be 100% right. So let's say you said, oh, I'm going to come to New Zealand on 19th of February, but then look, there's this live show to watch. You were busy, you couldn't, and you arrive on the 21st. It's absolutely fine. It is just mostly for survey. Okay, so once you've done your application for your working holiday visa, you want to check if your working holiday visa has been approved. Laura, how do you do that?
It's pretty easy. You just wait for the email to come through from Immigration New Zealand, and you should receive an email within 54 days.
Way earlier than that, right?
Usually it's much earlier, but like officially on the Immigration New Zealand website, they sometimes put like 54 days, you know, timeline, but it is usually like even within a week, sometimes 10 days. That sort of time frame is what we have experienced ourselves, as well as what people have after COVID have reported to us as well, how long it takes. So yeah, it's just as simple as receiving an email, and it's as simple as that. However, you can go onto the Immigration New Zealand website, you log in with your details that you used in order to make the application in the first place, and you can see how the status of your application is.
And yeah, there's no reason to log into your immigration portal until you got the email, by the way. Just pointing it out. Yeah. There's a lot of people that check every day and everything. There's really no reason to do that.
Don't do that to yourself. Don't make yourself go through the stress of that every day.
I know. Why do that? Why do that? Okay. So, that's something that we receive questions about all the time as well. Is, well, I got an email that says I have a working holiday visa, but like, what is it? Where do I print it? What is it? What does it look like, basically? So what I thought we'd do is we'll literally just remove Laura and we show you what the working holiday visa actually look like. So this is what the working holiday visa in New Zealand looks like. It's a piece of paper that you will be able to find. I saw your hand. It's a piece of paper that you can print if you want, but it's mostly digital, so you don't even have to print it if you don't want to. But the most important part is basically the part which are currently blacked out on that piece of paper right here because of privacy reasons, obviously. And so yeah, you obviously have your name and your address. The client number and the application number are the next two things which are blacked out, and those two things are the things which are really important. Then there is your name, and the letter is pretty much the same for everybody. Another thing to keep in mind is on the second paragraph, the paragraph that starts with the word details. I don't think I can point. Can I point? Okay, if I manage that correctly, this paragraph right here, this paragraph right there, it actually tells you when is your what date you can enter into New Zealand up until. So for example, this person right here on this visa, which shall remain nameless, had the right to enter New Zealand all the way until the 22nd of April 2023. So before that, so 21st of April 2023, she or he was still good to enter the country. And then it tells you a little bit lower you know, this is a UK scheme, so it tells you about the 12 months and then 11 months and etc. So yeah, so that's basically what a working holiday visa actually looks like. Da, 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 da. So yes, for those of you which are stressed and are not printing something, so I don't not sure what to print, it looks like this.
Yeah, and the thing to bear in mind is that it is an electronic visa, so it's automatically applied to your passport. So when you enter New Zealand using, even if you just use one of the smart gates where it scans your passport, it gets the details, it knows that you have a working holiday visa from that. So it's a pretty seamless process upon entering New Zealand, which we will also get into talking about what the airport process is in just a moment.
Yeah. Actually, another thing I'm going to point out, if you look, and there is different sections, there is the condition of your visa, and there is also your employment conditions in New Zealand. So some countries have different conditions, so just do make sure to read it. It's only one page. You can read. You come into New Zealand for a life-changing experience. You can read one piece of paper. So yeah, just read it. Sound like an old dad right here, but come on. Come on, people, do your homework. All right. So let's talk about arriving in New Zealand. So when you arrive in New Zealand, you're going to be landing at the airport, like you know, like everybody, and then you are going to pass through passport control, customs, biosecurities, and immigration. Now, in immigration, there is 3 things that may be asked to you, you know, as proof as evidence for your working holiday visa. And the beautiful Laura is going to go through them for you.
So just to clarify that you may or may not be asked these questions, right? It's just good to make sure that you are prepared in case you are asked about this by an immigration officer. So the things that they might ask you relating to your working holiday visa is whether you have evidence of sufficient funds. So earlier in the video, I talked about how you need to have at least 4,200 New Zealand dollars to show that you can support yourself or when you first arrive in New Zealand. So having either like a printed bank statement, that sort of thing is sufficient enough to prove that you have funds for your stay. You also need to have evidence of an outward travel ticket or sufficient funds to purchase one. So either have your return ticket out of New Zealand or prove on your bank statement that you have, say, an extra 1,000 New Zealand dollars in order for you to leave the country. So that's another piece of evidence that you may need to show at immigration. And then finally, the condition of a working holiday visa is that you do need to have travel insurance. So having evidence or a printed copy of your policy, that sort of thing, is sufficient enough to show that you do have travel insurance.
Okay, so the first week in New Zealand. So you arrived in New Zealand, and yeah, you passed through the airport without wetting yourself, Laura. Nonsense. Okay, you have your first week in New Zealand. Awesome. We have a full video on the channel about what you should be doing in your first week, literally day by day. Here's what you should be doing on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. But in short, a few things that you're going to need to be done will be getting over your jet lag, of course, getting some groceries for your first week. We are assuming that you're going to be staying in hostels or in some place like that, which are going to be a little cheaper, but you can also make your food there. It's cool. Setting up your phone, opening a bank account, getting an IRD number, and even a Kiwi access card, which would be quite handy if you don't have a New Zealand driver license, and starting to plan your transport around New Zealand. The first thing that I want to point out is during your first week in New Zealand, you want to be planning on getting out of Auckland. You do all your paperwork in Auckland and get out of Auckland. This will actually enhance your experience in New Zealand. Auckland is a really large city with very high cost of living, and wages are relatively low. Therefore, you won't be able to have the right kind of balance of income and experiences and all that you can have in many other places in New Zealand. We hear times and times and times again that people are coming to New Zealand and they regret spending too much time in Auckland and say, I wish I traveled earlier. I wish I spent more time outside of Auckland. So just please learn from this experience that we get all the time. Please learn from it and get out of Auckland. All right, so one of the really important part of your gap year in New Zealand obviously is going to be budgeting, or planning your gap year in New Zealand is going to be budgeting. So a question that we receive really often, Laura, is
how much savings are recommended for a New Zealand working holiday?
We do get that question super often. So what we decided to do is literally going over like all the different type of expenses that's going to incur before you arrive, when you arrive, and everything. And then at the end, we'll go over what we think you should save for a working holiday visa. So let's begin with the expenses that you may have before you arrive in New Zealand. And let's begin with, well, what we're genuinely just talking about.
Yeah.
And it's the application fee for your working holiday visa. So let's do an average of 245 New Zealand dollars. That will be what the average for most people, are getting a working holiday visa in New Zealand at the moment. But yeah, so do know that there is a wide range of costs for getting your visa for sure. Fabio is pitching in same answer to how much you should save as much as possible. Yes, that is true. Like, do not plan on saving when you're here in New Zealand. Plan to barely cover your expenses and save before.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
When you work in New Zealand, it's more like you are just working to just survive, to get by, but you're not going to leave New Zealand a millionaire. That's for sure.
Okay, the next expense that you may have is going to be your flight ticket. Our strong recommendation is to have your obviously inward and outward tickets paid or saved for on top of any other fees that we're going to be talking about. So you need to have saved for the fee to apply for your visa and your return ticket for sure. Then you obviously will have to have a travel insurance. That was what we were talking about. Travel insurance in New Zealand is a requirement for your working holiday visa. So make sure that you do have that covered and paid for the entirety of your trip. Don't think, oh yeah, I'll pay it monthly or anything. Don't do that. Just do the entirety of your planned trip in order to help you save a lot of money and genuinely actually save a lot of money compared to a lot of the international stuff. We've done some digging, we compared some. There is an article on NZ Pocket Guide. You can find some links on the website and in the description below, and that will help you find a local company as well that's going to give you more support. So yeah, so have that paid. So again, the visa fees, your return flight, your travel insurance. Now, if you plan on using a working holiday program, you want to have that saved as well and ready to go. It's not really a necessity to use a working holiday program, but it can be helpful for those which are extra stressed. And lastly, you also want to have saved up and purchased all the gears you need for your working holiday visa. These very expensive hiking boots that is very much needed in New Zealand. And you'll get your money back 10 times on your hiking boots because it's going to save you so much money on plenty of activities. Your backpack, your travel towels, what else is like an essential that you need to have?
If you need a fresh pair of swimwear, fresh pair of togs, as they say in New Zealand. I mean, it depends on what you already have, but there's always these odd little things that you need for traveling. Like Robin says, backpack, travel towel, perhaps. Just all these niggly little things.
Indeed. Now, Fabio, I'm going to ignore your last comment. Okay, so that is the thing that you need to kind of have sorted out before, or like paid for, basically, before you even just start leaving your home country, right? Then, there is this whole thing about sufficient funds, right? And I just want to address that right out of the gate. The New Zealand government requires you to have 4,200 New Zealand dollars, as a proof of funds, to have sufficient funds to support yourself and your trip in New Zealand, blah, 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 blah. It's like minimum wage. It's absolutely not enough. It's like if somebody says, I'm going to pay you minimum wage, that's plenty enough to actually be able to establish a brand new life in a different country, have some once-in-a-lifetime experience when exploring a brand new country, and actually have the time of your life and go out and make new friends because you have to establish a brand new social life as well. Hell no, you cannot do that on minimum wage. That is an absolute insanity. So 4,200 New Zealand dollars is absolutely not enough. And if you think that you can barely make it to that amount, take another year back home and save some more, right? There is no way this is enough. And again, the 4,200 New Zealand dollars does not include any of the other items I mentioned, right? So the absolute minimum that we used to say pre-COVID, and I'm going to put that with a caveat because we have changed it. The absolute minimum that we used to say before COVID was to have an absolute minimum of 5,500 New Zealand dollars. We've done some calculation and looked at inflation because the New Zealand cost of living went so up, both for rent, both for food,
cost of fuel, and
activity,
transport.
fuel, transport, all that is like way up. So we're now saying 6,300 New Zealand dollars. That's what we think is the absolute minimum for you to be able to come to New Zealand. Even if you decide, I'm going to come to New Zealand, I'm going to do everything Robin and Laura are telling me not to do. I'm going to just stay in Auckland. I'm not going to incur any expenses, and I'm going to move into a flat. I'm going to work. Even if you want to do that, you've got to be able to cover the first few weeks of rent, the bond, all these kind of things, right? Just moving into a flat can be up to 2,000 New Zealand dollars alone. And you haven't even started to sort out your transportation to go to work and to do all these kind of things. So just, you know, and again, some of the money you're going to get back, you know, some of it is a bond, you know, obviously.
Yeah,
some of
but
it
you need to have,
of rent.
You need to have the money available.
Exactly, yeah. And so, you know, even just going out and everything, you're going to go to a bar and a pint of beer is going to be $9, you know, you're not going to have only one. And, you know, it does cost a lot of money. So please don't come to New Zealand with the bare minimum hoping you can have the gap year of your life. It just won't work. I know I sound like a broken record right here, but man, I really, really, really need to hammer that down because so many people try to come with so little amount of money and don't have that experience that they were seeking, and it's just a little bit sad to hear. Okay, so let's talk quickly about like general costs, things that costs that will happen during your gap year in New Zealand, just so you have an understanding about what's the current cost in New Zealand. And we're going to get started with transportation. So if you want to take a bus, like what Armand is doing, is traveling with a company called Kiwi Experience, which kind of like hop on hop off around the country. So a yearly pass for that would be between 1,000 and 2,000 New Zealand dollars. If you want to take the national coach bus, what would that cost?
For about a 4-hour trip, that could be anywhere between 30 to 80 New Zealand dollars.
If you would like to buy a used car, something which is, you know, about 15 years old or older, that will cost you between 2,000 to 5,000, sometimes 6,000 New Zealand dollars. The price have been going up quite a lot lately.
To hire a car for the day, that costs between 30 to 150 New Zealand dollars. Obviously, that depends on the season, what type of car you're getting, but quite a large difference on the cost of getting a car rental per day.
Now, if you decide to buy yourself an actual camper van, you want to buy a camper van for 2 people, something relatively old, same thing, about 15 years or older, it would be between $4,000 and $15,000, depending on the whole high end you want to go. I mean, some of them are $150,000. I've seen some epic RVs. But,
yeah.
But we'll
Depends
talk about
luxurious.
backpacker kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about working holiday right here.
Yeah.
What about hiring a 2-person camper van?
For a 2-person camper van, for hiring, that can be anywhere between 60 New Zealand dollars, that's on the real cheap winter side scale, to
and the tiny little thing with just a mattress at the back and not much else,
small
right?
camper van,
not even self-contained.
Yeah, so the cheapest one you could get would be around 60 New Zealand dollars, and that goes all the way up to still talking about a small camper van, but 260 New Zealand dollars per day for a small camper van, probably in around the summer, spring, autumn time.
For petrol at the moment it's about $2.50 per litre, so here you go, that's about the current price. Domestic flight.
Domestic flights, one way, can be anywhere between 50 to 240 New Zealand dollars.
I don't think they do the $50 anymore.
Maybe they don't.
I think they stopped doing it literally when the borders reopened. Yeah, when the border reopened, so we need to update this
more
one.
Like 240 New Zealand dollars. Yeah, not cheap to fly around New Zealand.
And if you want to take the train around New Zealand, there's not that many train routes, but there's some pretty epic and very scenic ones. That would be between 150 and 300 New Zealand dollars. For a gap year, we're expecting you to either stay in a hostel, backpacker accommodation, or staying in campsite. That's kind of like the 2 options that we will suggest, with our favorite being hostels. We love the fact that you have access to the full facilities as well as being able to make so many friends. Night in hostels can range between $27 and $35 to stay in a dorm. That would be a bed for you for a night, but it can go up to about $75 if you want to have a room to yourself. When it comes down to campsites, there are some department conservation or dock campsites which are available, and some of them are free and some of them are up to $20 per person per night. That would be kind of like what you can expect for that. Alright, so all the typical costs in New Zealand, you get the cost of food and drinks. We do have about 3 or 4 different videos about that, so we're not going to cover that today, but we can talk about the different activities that are available in New Zealand. So if you want to do the skydive, that would be between $350 to $450 ish.
Yep, for bungee jumping, that would be between 150 to 290 New Zealand dollars.
If you wanted to do whitewater rafting, that'd be between 120 to 170 New Zealand dollars.
For jet boating, that could be between 80 New Zealand dollars to about 150 New Zealand dollars.
If you want to swim with dolphin, it would be around 150, sometimes a little bit more than that.
For whale watching, that's between 120 to 150 New Zealand dollars.
If you want to do a kayaking tour in New Zealand, that's going to be something around the $150 mark.
For glacier hiking, so doing a heli hiking on a glacier, that's between 390 to about 500 New Zealand dollars.
Yeah, it's definitely not 390. Like it went up for sure.
Yeah.
Milford cruise will be between $75 and $100.
For doing one of the geothermal parks in Rotorua, that's anywhere between 30 New Zealand dollars to 100 New Zealand dollars.
If you want to do horse trekking, there are some really cheap ones. There are some which are about like $60, but you know there are some other more expensive at about 150.
For canyoning, so epic sort of scrambling through a
You
river
love the word
somewhere.
scrambling. I love it.
Doing abseiling and all that sort of thing, that costs anywhere between 150 to 300 New Zealand dollars.
You're obviously going to want to go to Hobbiton, so plan $100 for that.
For glowworm caving, that's anywhere between 125 to 280 New Zealand dollars.
And the great walks are usually free to walk, but you've got to pay for the hut at night, right? And so that is, especially for foreigner, relatively expensive. Let's say like Milford track and everything like that, it's more than $100 a night. So keep that in mind. But as said, in New Zealand, there is plenty of free activities. So let's cheer you up. Moving on away from all those expensive costs. Hiking is free. Lord of the Rings filming location, a lot of them are free. Natural hot springs, there's plenty of them which are free. Volcanoes, beaches, waterfall, and stargazing. All of that is usually free. All right. So yeah, that wraps up a little bit like the cost that you will incur when trying to experience and make the most of New Zealand for sure.